You know, I once spent the night in a Ukrainian jail cell having a deep and insightful conversation with a £300 ex-soldier named Yuri about why the mailboxes in Kiev were telling him to hurt people. And let me tell you, that was still a more enjoyable experience than watching Thunder Force, the latest chronically unfunny Melissa McCarthy comedy, to be shot out onto Netflix, and a strong contender for my worst movie of 2021. Seriously, here's a little idea for a non-drinking game. Watch this movie from start to finish and take a shot every time one of the jokes actually makes you laugh. I guarantee by the time the credits roll, you'll be more sober than a Mormon on Sunday. Anyway, I'm gonna do my best to make sense of the plot here, but just like the reactor core at Chernobyl, I need to keep our exposure to a minimum for the sake of our long-term health. The movie takes place in an alternate reality Chicago, where a cosmic ray burst back in the 1980s granted superpowers to anyone with sociopathic tendencies. Why sociopaths? Don't know. The point is that it spawned a race of supervillains known as the Miscreants that have been terrorizing civilians ever since, including main character Emily, whose parents got killed by one of them when she was still a kid. After moving to a new school, Emily hooks up with tough girl Lydia. Pretty soon, they form a friendship, and within the first 3 minutes of the movie, you're basically told the gist of the entire plot. Wouldn't it be cool if someday, regular people could get superpowers and fight back against the miscreants? Keep that one in mind because it'll be important later. Flash forward 30 years, and Emily's now a brilliant scientist and head of a genetic engineering company, and Lydia is Melissa McCarthy. The two women have been estranged from each other since a bust-up in high school, but Lydia holds out hope of reconnecting with her old friend at an upcoming school reunion. When Emily doesn't show, Lydia goes to her offices to call her out. A series of unfortunate events leaves Lydia alone in a high-security lab with an experimental machine and a warning not to touch anything. So guess what happens? Wow, who could have predicted such a wacky turn of events? The upshot here is that the machine uses a special serum to give regular people superpowers, just like Emily planned 30 years ago. In Lydia's case, it gives her super strength, while Emily gains the ability to turn herself invisible. Wow, how original. Can't think of any other superheroes that have those kinds of powers.
You serious?
So that's the basic setup for what this movie laughably calls a plot. The two women have to learn to harness their new powers and work together to take on the miscreants. They even come up with their own brand name, Thunder Force, because they're fat and I guess it's meant to be like thunder thighs or something? I don't fucking know. Meanwhile, the guy running for mayor of Chicago turns out to be the world's most obvious villain, using the miscreants to stoke public fear and get himself elected on the promise of bringing them under control. Realizing the Thunder Force could derail his plans, he orders the miscreants to take them down. It's all standard stuff that you've seen in a million other superhero flicks, and there's absolutely nothing new or original that I can think to talk about here. The big selling point, I guess, is meant to be the relationship between the two leads and how they reconnect with each other after being estranged since childhood. It's basically your typical comedy formula of sticking two radically different people together, giving them some challenge to overcome, and watching the sparks fly. Kind of like The Heat. In fact, exactly like The Heat now that I think about it. If I didn't know better, I'd say this movie was just recycling the same formula as McCarthy's earlier, more successful movies, where she plays yet another brash, abrasive arsehole, opposite a typical straight man character. The difference here is that in The Heat, she had Sandra Bullock to play off. Not this time though. Octavia Spencer's a good actor, I guess, but fuck me, you'd never know it from this movie. She looks bored, uncomfortable and embarrassed most of the time. The two of them have got absolutely no chemistry together, and most of their scenes feel stilted and awkward. The thing is, the idea of childhood friends trying to reconnect as adults is an interesting one to explore, as they each grapple with how the others changed and grown over the years. But that's the real problem here. They haven't. They're both the same fucking people they were 30 years earlier. Emily is smart, sophisticated and driven, while Lydia is an uneducated slacker that doesn't take things seriously. The elements that broke up their friendship as kids are still there as adults, which kind of makes me wonder what exactly I'm supposed to root for. Wouldn't it be crazy and unexpected if their lives had totally reversed course after high school? Like, Lydia's shitty performance caused her to buckle down and work hard to improve herself, while Emily became an overconfident slacker that never lived up to her their early potential? Wouldn't that give you more interesting and nuanced characters to explore in later life? Also, how about reversing their powers so that the high school nerd suddenly becomes super strong in a way that she's never been before, while the dumb tough girl has to learn to use her invisibility in a smarter, more tactical way? But nah, let's just laugh at Melissa McCarthy acting like a fucking child. I mean, I use the term laugh pretty loosely here, because if there's one thing Thunder Force proves, it's that even morbidly obese middle-aged women can be chronically unfunny. Seriously, this movie's about as amusing as a fucking cancer diagnosis. Remember in Ghostbusters 2016, how about 50% of the movie was just the actors trying to ad-lib their way through scenes, and desperately construct jokes on the fly, so that every lame, obvious gag went on about 5 minutes longer than it needed to? Well, bump that ratio up to about 90% and you'll have Thunder Force. It's like the writers think that if you push a joke hard enough and long enough, you can somehow force people to laugh at it through sheer fucking determination. I'm not kidding, there's a scene that lasts almost a minute of Lydia eating a bowl of cereal. That's it, that's the scene. Or another where a character tries and fails to tell a knock-knock joke over and over and over again. Jason Bateman with lobster claws? That's funny, right? Tasing a guy for like 5 minutes straight while screaming the whole time? Comedy gold. Two overweight women in superhero costumes struggling to get out of a sports car? That'll have them rolling in the aisles. Remember Jack Black's character from Tropic Thunder that had been hopelessly typecast by a series of films about a family that farts a lot? Remember how that was basically an indictment of shitty lowbrow comedies that appeal to the lowest common denominator? Well, it's not a parody anymore, trust me. The only thing that did make me laugh were the special effects, but probably not in the way the makers of the film had intended. I mean, I guess Thunder Force wasn't made on a huge budget, which makes it even weirder that they decided to throw in a ton of extravagant CGI fight scenes, like this film is actually trying to compete with legit superhero movies. It's ridiculous and embarrassing to watch, and I actually started to feel bad for the actors towards the end. You can practically see the life and hope draining out of their eyes as the movie drags on. Then I realised they probably got paid millions of dollars to make this shit, and that money could have financed a dozen smaller, more creative, and almost certainly far superior movies. Instead, this fucking calamity got shat out onto the world. Ultimately, Thunder Force is nobody's finest hour, the kind of film that most of those involved probably wish they could scrub from their resume. Damn man, I really wish I could scrub it from my brain, let me tell you. It's a boring, lazy, chronically unfunny waste of 2 hours of your life, representing the very worst tendencies of modern entertainment. And if you find yourself watching it for some godforsaken reason, it's time to take a long hard look at your life. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now!